I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it, and I read it to her in there, and I did sort of feel a sort of
innocence about her. You just thought, wow.
What if everything we thought we understood about Princess Diana's final years wasn't just wrong, but built on a foundation of straight-up manipulation and hidden deals? What if the secrets she carried weren't only about a broken marriage or quiet heartbreak, but something way darker hiding behind palace walls? Today, we're digging into a truth so heavy, it left Princess Anne wiping her face in shock and pushed Prince William to quietly assemble a private team to look into what really went down with his mother. This isn't another basic royal recap. This is deception at the top level, strange break-ins, suspicious evidence, and a cover-up that some insiders believe may have shaped the final chapter of Diana's life. Stick with me, because what you're about to uncover might flip everything you believed about the people's princess. Let's rewind to November 1995, the night that changed everything. Princess Diana sits down for what becomes the most watched royal interview in UK history. Over 23 million people glued to the TV as she opened up on BBC's Panorama. You remember that iconic line, right? There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. But here's the part nobody watching knew. Diana wasn't just speaking from raw honesty. She was speaking from a world carefully twisted around her by planted fears, manipulated emotions, and crafted illusions. The woman the world saw that night had been pushed into believing she was surrounded by threats from the very institution that was supposed to uphold truth. Now ask yourself, how does a BBC journalist barely known outside newsroom hallways score the royal interview every global name wanted? How did he get a princess to choose him over Oprah Winfrey, Barbara Walters, and David Frost, who were basically media kings and queens of that era? The answer doesn't just surprise you, it rattles you. It all begins with 2 fake bank statements and a chain of lies built with precision. The kind of scheme so wild that when Princess Anne finally saw the newly uncovered evidence, she reportedly broke down in tears because the truth hit that hard. And at the center of it all, one name, Martin Bashir, a name tied to one of the most talked about scandals in British journalism. Back then, Bashir wasn't famous. He was a mid-level BBC reporter who joined the network in 1986 and climbed step by step until he reached Panorama. But here's what made him powerful. He carried the BBC brand behind his words. When he said Panorama, people took it seriously. Panorama wasn't a gossip rag. It had the reputation of being one of the most trusted investigative programs on Earth. When they spoke, the world believed it. So when Bashir approached Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, with what looked like evidence of a plot against Diana's safety, people paid attention. When he laid out bank statements showing palace staff supposedly getting paid to spy on the princess, the story seemed airtight. After all, he was from the BBC. But those statements, completely fake. Designed by graphic artist Matt Wiesler, who had no idea the documents he produced would be used to mess with a woman already dealing with heartbreak, pressure, and the weight of global attention. Imagine that, unknowingly helping create something that would twist someone's entire reality. Picture Diana's situation, separated from her husband, cut off from true support, watched by cameras everywhere she went, and then this journalist arrives with proof that her own circle might be turning on her, proof that people close to her were taking money to betray her, proof that her life could be in danger. How would anyone think clearly in a moment like that? Now here's the web of lies he told, and these aren't rumors. Charles Spencer kept notes, every meeting, every claim. First, Bashir insisted that Prince Charles was planning to have Diana murdered, not separated, not sidelined, murdered. Second, he claimed Charles wanted to marry the nanny, Tiggy Legerbork, and for that to happen, both Diana and Camilla had to be out of the way. That's 2 women supposedly in danger. Third, he said, Prince Edward was secretly being treated for AIDS at a London hospital. A story with zero truth, crafted just to stir chaos. And here's the part so unreal it almost sounds like a movie twist. If it wasn't so painful, Bashir told Diana that 13-year-old Prince William had been given a special James Bond-style watch that could record conversations. The implication that Diana's own son was being used to spy on her. Charles Spencer wasn't some clueless guy in the room. He was sharp, alert, and watching every detail that night in that Knightsbridge apartment. As he sat there taking notes, he could already feel something was off. In his own words, he thought Bashir was talking pure nonsense, like the whole pitch didn't add up. When the meeting ended, he even pulled Diana to the side and apologized, saying he was sorry for bringing her into contact with someone he felt was just spinning fantasies. But here's the heartbreaking twist. Charles assumed Diana had seen right through the whole performance too. He thought she caught the same red flags he did. She hadn't. She believed every piece of what he dismissed. And in the 47 days between that first meeting and the Panorama interview, Bashir kept pressing, feeding her fears, building a mental storm that left her more isolated than ever. Then came the mysterious break-ins, and that's where things get even darker. Right after the Panorama interview aired, 2 oddly targeted burglaries took place. Maybe it's coincidence, or maybe not. I'll lay out the facts, and you can decide. First, Matt Wiesler, the graphic designer who unknowingly created the fake bank statements, had his flat broken into. Nothing was stolen except one tiny item, a plastic case filled with floppy disks. And on those disks, the artwork for the fake bank statements. That was the only thing missing from an entire apartment. Days later, producer Mark Killick, who worked closely with Bashir, had his house torn apart. But again, nothing valuable was taken. The whole place wasn't looted. Only his study was shredded. Papers everywhere, drawers flipped, like someone hunting for one thing and one thing only. So who pulled off these break-ins? Let's break down the potential suspects. Was it the BBC trying to bury evidence? Doesn't add up. Matt already saved paper copies, and they'd been faxed to several people. BBC knew the files were already floating around. Stealing the discs wouldn't erase anything. Was it rival journalists trying to score a scoop? Maybe, but think about it. If they stole evidence and then ran a story with that same evidence, they'd basically be confessing to the crime. Was it Bashir himself? Same issue as the BBC theory. The documents were already spread around. There was nothing left to hide, so that leaves the most unsettling possibility. British intelligence, MI5, MI6, or GCHQ. Agencies that had already monitored Diana, tracked her calls, and paid attention to who she talked to. What if they wanted to know exactly what Bashir had told her? What if they needed to measure how deep her fears ran, or what she believed about all those supposed threats around her? Sounds wild, but remember, this was the Princess of Wales, someone whose life was under non-stop scrutiny. Is it really impossible to think intelligence services might want to listen in on what a BBC journalist had planted in her mind? Now here's where things go from shady to downright irresponsible. The BBC's role. They knew early on that Bashir used fake documents and phony claims to lock down that interview, and they stayed silent. Award-winning filmmaker Andy Webb started digging into the story in 2007, sending Freedom of Information requests to the BBC asking for records on their internal review and Bashir's tactics. You know what the BBC replied? They said those documents didn't exist, in official writing, on BBC letterhead, but that was false. The documents did exist. Stacks of them. And suddenly, in 2020, 13 years after Webb's first request and just 48 hours before his documentary aired, the BBC magically found the files and handed them over. Why? Because they knew they were about to get exposed. And even then, even after scrambling to gather the truth, the documents contained misleading claims. One report tried to flip the story entirely, suggesting Charles Spencer was the one who showed Bashir documents, not the other way around. A complete reversal meant to rescue their own image. Imagine trusting a respected institution your whole life, believing in their reputation for honesty, only to discover they covered up how they got the most famous interview in their history and hid the deception that left a princess scared, manipulated, and emotionally backed into a corner. Now let's talk about Diana's regret, the part that crushes people when they hear it. According to Rosa Monckton, one of her closest friends, Diana deeply regretted the Panorama interview. She later understood she'd been manipulated, that her fears had been played with, and by the time she realised the truth, the damage was done. And then comes the moment that breaks everyone. The night before the interview aired, Diana spoke with Prince William. He was only 13, still a student at Eton. According to accounts, he watched the interview alone in his room, crying in silence. Imagine being a kid and hearing your own mother speak openly about her private battles, her relationships, her struggles, her mental health, her bulimia, all on national TV with millions watching. Imagine knowing the world was dissecting your family like a spectacle. You don't need royal blood to feel how humiliating that would be for any young teen. And for William, it was even heavier, because it wasn't just classmates or neighbours watching. It was the entire planet tuned in like it was entertainment. Now follow this thread closely, because it's the key to understanding why Princess Anne completely broke down when she learned the full truth. Just 2 years after that Panorama interview, Diana was gone, killed in a tragic car crash in a Paris tunnel on August 31st, 1997. The official narrative: a drunk driver, relentless paparazzi, no seatbelts, a heartbreaking accident. But the question haunting Prince William, haunting Charles Spencer, and haunting anyone who actually cares about the truth is this: how straight, how unbroken, how dangerously thin is the line from that interview to that Paris tunnel. Charles Spencer didn't mince words. He described the consequences of that interview as lethal, his phrase, his judgment. And when you look at the facts, you see why. Before Panorama, Diana still had royal protection officers, trained professionals who knew how to keep her safe, plus advisors and people she trusted. Sure, her marriage collapsed. Sure, she was separated from Charles, but she had security, a proper team keeping her protected. After the interview, everything shifted. After Bashir filled her mind with the idea that her staff were spies, that the people guarding her couldn't be trusted, that everyone around her had been paid to betray her, Diana slowly pushed away the entire network built to protect her. By the time she arrived in Paris in August 1997, who was actually watching her back? Not the elite royal protection officers, not people trained to handle threats. Instead, she was relying on what investigators later described as a shaky, unprepared setup run by Mohammed Al-Fayed, a security group that one expert flat out called a Mickey Mouse ramshackle operation. Guards who placed her in a car driven by someone who should not have been behind the wheel at all. A plan that collapsed in every possible way. And here's the haunting question: would she have made those same choices if the BBC had told her the truth? If, in 1996, someone from the corporation had walked up to her and said, "Your Royal Highness, Martin Bashir deceived you. Those stories about plots, spying and conspiracies, none of them were real." Imagine how different her path might have been. The weight of that question sits heavy decades later. On May 20th, 2021, Lord Dyson's official report confirmed what many suspected. Bashir used forged documents, lied repeatedly, and the BBC covered it up. That same day, Prince William stepped forward and did something rare. No spokesperson, no polished press release. He looked straight into the camera, speaking in his own voice, choosing his own words, making it personal. He said, "What saddens me most is that if the BBC had properly investigated the complaints and concerns first raised in 1995, my mother would have known that she'd been deceived. She was failed not just by a rogue reporter, but by leaders at the BBC who looked the other way." Do you feel the weight of that statement? He wasn't only calling out Bashir, he was pointing at the top levels of the BBC. He was saying leadership knew something was wrong and ignored it. And here's something even more chilling. William used the phrase, "my mother would have known," past tense, because by the time the truth finally emerged, Diana had been gone for 24 years. The BBC had more than 2 decades to tell the truth, more than 2 decades to launch a real investigation, more than 2 decades to warn Diana. And they didn't. They chose silence to protect their image. Now here's the part most people never hear. William isn't just giving emotional speeches. According to people connected to the situation, he has assembled his own team, an actual investigative group digging through what happened in 1995, what went on behind the scenes in 1996, and even the actions the BBC took, or didn't take, in recent years when they had opportunities to finally be transparent. What is William's team looking for? They want to map out exactly who knew what and at what moment. They want to track every deception, every silence, every decision that protected the institution instead of protecting a mother. They want the names, the motives, the timeline. And here's what has people inside media circles nervous. William has access to information and resources ordinary journalists will never touch. When the future king of a major nation says he wants answers, people don't ignore the call. They respond. They hand things over. Doors open that stay locked for everyone else. Think about what all of this means for him personally. He was 13 when he saw that interview. 2 years later, his mother was gone, and he has spent the last 25 years with the knowledge that something was terribly wrong, that his mother was misled, and that a global institution had hidden the truth. And for most of that time, Prince William had to hold back, stay quiet, carefully walking the line to be diplomatic, to not rock the royal boat. But now he's the Prince of Wales, the heir to the throne. And he's done staying silent. He's stepping forward, demanding truth, and using the power of his position to finally bring accountability to what was done to his mother. Princess Anne's reaction? That's a crucial piece of this story. Why did she break down in tears? Anne has always been one of the most private royals, a woman of discipline, grit, and unwavering duty. She doesn't do emotional public displays. She never gives revealing interviews. She keeps calm and carries on. The very definition of British restraint. But sources with access to recently uncovered evidence, documents showing exactly how Diana was manipulated, how many lies Bashir told, and how deeply the BBC covered it up, say Anne's reaction was immediate, visceral, and impossible to ignore. Here's why. Anne knew Diana. Their relationship as sisters-in-law was complicated, not particularly close, and with tensions over the years. But Anne is also a mother, a woman who's lived her life under public scrutiny. Who knows what it means to have every move examined and criticised? And when she saw the evidence of how Diana had been terrorised, shown fake proof of murder plots, manipulated into believing no one around her could be trusted, isolated from everyone who could help her, when Anne realised that Diana went to her death, thinking her own family wanted her dead, it was too much to bear. Sources report Anne had to leave the room when some documents were presented. She was seen wiping away tears. This is the same woman who manages over 500 royal engagements a year, who got back to work immediately after a serious riding accident, who has never sought sympathy or attention. And yet, in that moment, she crumbled because she finally understood something horrifying. The line from Bashir's lies to that Paris tunnel might have been far straighter, far thicker, and far more direct than anyone had dared to admit. And now, the DNA evidence. You might be wondering what that even means in this story. Forensic document analysis has been done on the original forged bank statements and related materials using techniques that simply didn't exist back in 1995. Investigators can now definitively prove who created the documents, when they were made, how they were altered, and, most importantly, that they were used specifically to deceive Diana. This isn't circumstantial evidence. This isn't, he said, she said. This is hard forensic proof, the DNA evidence, if you will, confirming what Diana's final secret really was. She wasn't paranoid, she wasn't unstable, she wasn't imagining things. She was systematically misled by people she trusted to tell her the truth. For years, critics dismissed her fears as signs of mental instability, claiming she imagined conspiracies everywhere. They pointed to the Panorama interview as proof she had lost touch with reality. But now we know the truth. Diana's paranoia was manufactured. It was deliberately created by a journalist desperate for a sensational story, and enabled by an institution more concerned with ratings and reputation than honesty or truth. So why hasn't anyone faced consequences? That's the question everyone wants answered. Bashir committed clear forgery. BBC executives appear to have covered it up. Legal experts confirm Bashir's actions meet every criterion for a forgery prosecution. Evidence is undeniable. Intent is documented. Harm is obvious. Yet no charges were ever filed. Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, pushed hard for prosecution. He had discussions with senior police officers and made it clear he expected action. Police admitted some of the conduct was dishonest, but still chose not to prosecute. Why? The unanswered question keeps people awake at night. Was it because prosecution would expose who else knew and what else had been covered up? Spencer even considered a private prosecution, consulting lawyers and weighing costs of £300,000 to £500,000. But in the end, he decided against it. The question remains, where is the accountability? Who pays for what was done to Diana? The implications go far beyond the royal family. This isn't just about Diana. This is about trust in institutions. This is about what happens when organisations meant to serve the public. Truth prioritise protecting their image instead of being honest. The BBC is publicly funded. Every UK household with a television pays a licence fee to support it. The public pays, expecting honest, accurate, trustworthy journalism in return. But the BBC did the opposite. It used its public funding and reputation to carry out one of the most shameful deceptions in modern journalism, then spent 25 years lying to cover it up. Think about what this means for every other BBC story you've ever believed. Think about what it means for trust in journalism as a whole. If the BBC, the gold standard of public broadcasting, can do this and get away with it for decades, what does that say about media integrity? And it's not just about journalism, it's about how institutions protect themselves at the expense of individuals. Diana was one person, vulnerable and isolated, facing one of the most powerful media organizations in the world. She never stood a chance. How many others have been crushed by institutions that decided their reputation mattered more than the truth? How many stories have been buried, covered up, or twisted because it was simply easier than being honest? How many lives have been quietly ruined while the powerful protected themselves? There's a painful parallel with Harry. Prince Harry, Diana's younger son, has spent years openly discussing his difficult relationship with the press. He's sued newspapers, given explosive interviews, written a memoir detailing his struggles, and faced criticism for being too sensitive or too angry. People have compared him to William, who appears to handle the media with more calm and control. But those critics miss the bigger picture. Harry watched what happened to his mother. He saw her manipulated, deceived, and blamed for the consequences she never deserved. He was 12 years old when Diana died, and for decades he's grappled with the question, did the media play a role in his mother's death? Now, with this new evidence confirming just how extensively Diana was deceived, Harry's concerns seem far from paranoid. His anger at the press, his determination to protect his own family from manipulation, all of it suddenly makes perfect sense. The lesson here isn't that Harry should act more like William, it's that both brothers are dealing with trauma in different ways. William channels his pain into investigation and accountability, seeking answers and uncovering truths. Harry channels his into protection and distance, ensuring his own family never faces the same exploitation. Both approaches are valid, both are understandable, and both deserve recognition. Both deserve justice for what was done to their mother, and the ripple effects of that pain extend far beyond the royal family. So what would justice even look like now? Diana is gone. We can't undo the past, but we can make sure there are consequences, that this never happens again. First, Martin Bashir should face prosecution for forgery. Living in America shouldn't shield him from accountability. The British government should seek his extradition, and he should face trial for his actions. Second, BBC executives who participated in the cover-up should be held accountable. That could mean criminal charges for misconduct in public office, or at minimum, the end of their careers and a public acknowledgement of their wrongdoing. Third, the BBC should face financial consequences. Diana's estate, her sons, and her brother are entitled to significant damages for the harm caused by the BBC. Damages that should come from corporate funds, not public licence fees. Fourth, systemic reform is urgently needed. The BBC's internal complaints process failed spectacularly. There needs to be an independent body with real power to investigate journalistic misconduct and enforce consequences. Self-regulation is clearly insufficient. And finally, there needs to be a fully public accounting of what happened, not another internal review controlled by the BBC, but an independent public inquiry with the power to compel testimony, records, and all relevant documents. The British people deserve to know the full truth about what one of their most trusted institutions did. So we return to where we began. Princess Anne breaking down in tears after seeing the evidence of what was done to Diana, William assembling a team to uncover answers that should have been given decades ago, Harry working to shield his family from the same forces that destroyed his mother. Diana has been gone nearly 30 years, but she still sits at the centre of questions about truth, deception, accountability, and the very ethics of those we trust. The DNA evidence, forensic proof of the forgeries, the documented lies, the confirmed cover-up. It has finally revealed Diana's final secret. Not that she was paranoid, not that she was unstable, not that she made mistakes. The secret is that she was systematically deceived by people she should have been able to trust, and then blamed for the consequences of that deception. We like to remember Diana as the people's princess, the woman who brought warmth and humanity to the royal family, and she was all of those things. But she was also a victim of institutional cruelty, of media manipulation, of men who prioritized career over her well-being. The question now is, what are we going to do about it? Will we demand accountability? Will we push for systemic change? Will we make sure this never happens to anyone else? Or will we just move on to the next royal scandal, the next media controversy, the next story that grabs attention for a moment and then fades into obscurity? The tears Princess Anne shed weren't just for Diana, they were for all of us, for what we lost when deception triumphed over truth. It's time to make this right. If you found this investigation as shocking as I did, don't just scroll past. Share this video, comment below with your thoughts, and let's start a conversation about media ethics and institutional accountability. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because we're going to keep following this story. William's team is still digging. There are more revelations to come and more people who must be held accountable. We'll be here reporting it all. And the next time you consume news from any source, even the most trusted institutions, remember Diana. Remember that reputation doesn't guarantee truth. Remember that it's our responsibility to question, verify, and demand better. Diana's legacy isn't just about charity, fashion, or warmth. It's about truth, the danger of institutional deception, and the courage it takes to stand up to powerful organizations that abuse their trust. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for helping ensure that what happened to Princess Diana never happens to anyone else. Justice for Diana. Truth for all of us.